I remember the scent of lilies that morning, the kind they use at funerals. The irony wasn't lost on me, even as I watched my own coffin being lowered into the ground. The choir sang Amazing Grace, and tears fell like rain, but none of them knew the truth. I wasn't dead. Not yet. From the black limousine parked across the cemetery gates, I watched them mourn me. My daughter sobbed into her silk handkerchief. My so-called friends whispered prayers they didn't mean. And my husband, my sweet, deceitful husband, stood there in a tailored suit that I had paid for, pretending to grieve. Only one person didn't cry. Only one person met my eyes through the tinted glass and nodded ever so slightly. Her name was Ava Monroe. My attorney, my confidant, and the only person who knew the truth behind my death. 3 weeks earlier, I had been declared dead after a car crash on Highway 17. Burned beyond recognition, they said. DNA confirmed. Funeral arranged. My life officially over. But that's the thing about being a woman like me. I didn't get to 60 by trusting everything I was told. The crash had no accident. Someone wanted me gone, someone close. And when you spend decades building an empire, you learn to keep secrets even from the people sleeping next to you. As the final shovel of dirt covered the coffin, I felt something inside me break, not from grief but from rebirth. They thought they buried Clara Johnson. But what they really buried was the version of me that forgave too easily. The limousine pulled away slowly, gravel crunching beneath the tires. Ava didn't look at me as she drove, but her words cut through the silence. You know you can't go back, Clara. Once we start this, there's no undoing it. I smiled, my reflection staring back at me in the dark window, alive, fierce, unbroken. I don't want to go back, I whispered. I want to finish what they started. The world believed I was gone. Now it was time to see what the world does when a ghost starts telling the truth. The night before my death, the air felt heavy, like the world itself was holding its breath. I was sitting in my study, the one room Marcus never entered. A cup of untouched tea sat beside a folder labeled Harper Holdings, Confidential. That folder changed everything. For 30 years I had believed I was married to an honest man. A man who built his fortune beside me, who kissed me goodnight, who whispered that we'd grow old together. But that night, under the soft glow of my desk lamp, I found the truth. Marcus had another account. Hidden. Under a false name. First I thought it was a mistake. But when I saw the transfers, money drained from our joint business, funneled into that secret account, the realization cut through me like glass. Every business trip. Every delayed payment. Every quiet phone call in the middle of the night. It all made sense now. He wasn't just hiding money. He was hiding me. That same night I called Ava. My voice was shaking, but her response was cold and sharp, the way a lawyer should be. If what you're saying is true, Clara, this isn't just betrayal. It's a setup. You're being erased. Erased. The word echoed in my chest. By dawn, Ava and I had a plan. It wasn't about revenge, not yet. It was about survival. We would stage my death. The timing had to be perfect. Marcus had arranged a business dinner that evening, one I wasn't supposed to attend. But instead of showing up, I sent my assistant to drop off my car for detailing on Highway 17. The same highway where, hours later, a fiery crash would take my life. The next morning, Marcus called everyone he knew. He cried to the police. He even gave a statement on the local news saying, "She was the love of my life." The performance was flawless. But behind his crocodile tears, I saw something else: relief. He thought he had one. What he didn't know was that the ashes buried in that coffin didn't belong to me. They belonged to the woman he created when he betrayed me. The one who would rise from the smoke. That night, as I hid in Ava's safe house, I looked at myself in the mirror. No makeup. No jewelry. No husband's name. Just Clara. For the first time in decades, I wasn't anyone's wife, business partner, or possession. I was my own woman again. And that was more dangerous than death. The world thought I was gone. And for the first few weeks I let them. The papers called it a tragic accident. My colleagues sent flowers. My so-called friends posted old pictures with long captions about the beautiful soul we lost too soon. But Marcus, he didn't shed real tears. Not when he thought no one was watching. From Ava's safe house I watched everything unfold. We had cameras, contacts, access to accounts. I could see him in real time. The man I had shared my life with looked strangely free. First, he visited my grave every day. By the third week, he stopped coming. That's when I knew. Whatever mask of grief he wore, it was slipping. One night, Ava showed me something on her laptop. "You need to see this," she said quietly. On the screen was a live feed from our old home, the mansion Marcus and I built together. The security cameras I'd had installed years ago were still active. And there he was. Marcus. But he wasn't alone. A woman was with him, young, tall, her hair tied neatly in a bun. She laughed as she poured wine into my crystal glasses. Then Marcus leaned in and whispered something that made my stomach twist. "It's all ours now." Ours. He said it so easily, so naturally, as if I had never existed. The woman's name was Elise, one of his company's junior partners. I recognized her from the last charity gala I attended. She had been polite, charming, and entirely forgettable, or so I thought. Now she was wearing my robe, drinking from my cup, sleeping in my bed. Ava placed a hand on my shoulder. "Don't do anything rash," she warned. "We need to move carefully. You're not ready to be seen." But I wasn't listening. My pulse was hammering in my ears. The part of me that had been shattered by betrayal was starting to sharpen again, reforming into something stronger, colder. 2 months after my death, Marcus sold our company shares. He transferred everything, millions, into that secret account under his alias. What he didn't know was that I had already locked him out. Before I died, I'd updated the access protocols, placing them under a name no one would suspect, a name only I could use. When he tried to move the money, the system froze. A notification pinged Ava's tablet. "Unauthorized access attempt, account locked." Ava grinned. "Looks like someone just tried to rob a ghost." But that was only the beginning. Ava wanted justice through the courts. I wanted something else, truth. So I began writing again. Letters, journal entries, small pieces of my story. If the world ever learned the truth, I wanted them to know exactly who Marcus Lane was and who Clara Lane had become. Each night, I watched him unravel a little more. Elise started to notice it too. His paranoia, his sudden bursts of anger. He'd wake up in the middle of the night sweating, whispering my name. "Clara. Forgive me." But forgiveness was not what I had come back for. One evening, I sat by the window of the safe house, watching the city lights flicker. For the first time in months, I smiled. Because the woman in that mansion wasn't me anymore. The woman watching from the shadows, she was reborn. For months, I was just a shadow, silent, invisible, and everywhere. Ava told me once, "Revenge is a story best written in silence." And so, I learned to listen. Every morning, I'd sit by the window of that quiet apartment, a cup of coffee in one hand and a tablet in the other, watching Marcus through the hidden cameras. The man who once lectured about control was now unraveling like cheap thread. He looked over his shoulder constantly. He spoke to himself in empty rooms. At times, I wondered if he could sense me, not physically, but in spirit. Like some part of him knew I wasn't gone. Ava was methodical. She wanted evidence, not emotion. "Clara," she'd say, "we'll expose him when the timing is perfect. Until then, you play dead." Play dead. The irony wasn't lost on me. Because every night, as I stared into the mirror, I barely recognized the woman reflected back. No makeup. No expensive jewelry. No designer suits. Just Clara stripped down to her core. And for the first time in years, I could finally see the truth. I hadn't died the day my car went off that bridge. I had been dying long before that, little by little, every time I sacrificed my peace to keep a man like Marcus comfortable. Now, the woman in the mirror was no longer afraid. 3 months after my funeral, a rumor began to spread in Marcus's circles. Someone had seen me. At first, it was just whispers. A figure resembling me at a cafe in downtown. A voice that sounded like mine on a late-night phone call. Marcus brushed it off at first. "People imagine things," he told Elise. But then came the letter. It arrived at his office, no return address. No signature. Just a single line typed neatly in the center of the page. "Some ghosts don't stay buried." Ava and I watched from the safe house camera as he opened it. The color drained from his face. "Good," Ava said softly. "Let him sweat." But for me, it wasn't about scaring him anymore. It was about reminding him that the truth always finds its way back. A week later, I walked into the city for the first time since my death. It felt surreal, the air colder, the streets louder, but somehow freeing. I wore a long black coat, dark glasses, and a headscarf. Nobody recognized me until I passed the glass window of Harper Investments, Marcus's office. I stopped. For a brief second, our eyes met, or maybe I imagined it. He froze, staring towards the street, his lips parting slightly as if he'd seen a ghost. And maybe in some way he had. I turned and walked away before he could blink. That night, Marcus called Elise in a panic. "She's alive. I saw her." Elise laughed nervously. "Marcus, that's impossible." "Then tell me why she sent this," he shouted, throwing the letter across the room. But deep down, even Elise began to wonder. The fear spread between them like smoke, slow and poisonous. Later that week, I received an email from an unknown address. Subject: "Who are you really?" It was from Elise. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. For a moment I considered responding, telling her everything. But then I remembered Ava's words. "Control the silence, Clara. Let them reveal themselves." So I replied with just 3 words. "Ask your reflection." Ava laughed when she read it. "You're terrifying, you know that?" "Good," I said. "It's about time." That night I stood before the mirror again. The woman staring back wasn't a ghost anymore. She was reborn from ashes, armed with truth and patience. "Soon," I whispered to my reflection, "they'll finally see who I really am." And for the first time in years, the woman in the mirror smiled back. The first time I stepped back into the world as myself, it was a Thursday morning, cold, silver light cutting through the city like glass. 3 months had passed since my death, and yet the world had kept moving without hesitation. The same coffee shops buzzed, the same cabs honked, and the same people hurried down sidewalks pretending they weren't running from something. But me? I wasn't pretending anymore. Ava insisted on caution. "Clara," she warned, "every move counts now. You show your face and everything changes." I looked at her, my reflection in the window between us, 2 women, survivors of different wars. "It's time," I said. "I didn't fake my death just to hide forever." Ava sighed, then handed me a small flash drive. "Everything you need is in here. The accounts, the transfers, the emails he thought were deleted. It's time to make them remember who Clara Williams really is." That day, I returned to the one place that had once defined me. Harper Investments. The building looked the same, but the energy had shifted. People avoided each other's eyes, whispers lingered in hallways, and the ghost of scandal danced in the air. I entered quietly, wearing confidence like armor. My hair is shorter now, silver threads showing, skin glowing against a sharp black suit. Not a widow, not a victim, just a woman resurrected. The receptionist looked up, confused. "Ma'am, you need an appointment." I smiled. "Tell Marcus Lane that Clara Williams is here to see him." She froze. The color drained from her face. And I watched the ripple of panic spread through the office like an electric wave. Within minutes, Marcus appeared in the glass corridor, pale, trembling, but trying to hide it behind a corporate grin. "Clara, this isn't possible," he stammered. "Oh, it's very possible," I said softly. "I just decided to stop pretending to be dead." He ushered me into his office, the same office where he once humiliated me, where he planned everything that followed. Now it was my stage. He poured himself a drink. His hands shook. I thought you were gone," he muttered. "I know," I said. "You made sure of it." He looked up sharply. "Clara, it wasn't like that. You have to understand." "Understand?" I'm interrupted. "You forged my signature, Marcus. You emptied accounts we built together. You let the world think I was dead while you rebuilt your empire on my grave." He flinched. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut through air. I stepped closer, lowered my voice. "Do you know what it feels like to watch your own funeral? To see people cry over your coffin, knowing the only one smiling is the man who buried you alive?" He swallowed hard. "What do you want from me?" I smiled faintly. "Not money. Not revenge. Just truth." I slid the flash drive across his desk. "Everything you erased, I recovered. The evidence, the deals, the betrayals. You'll confess publicly, or this goes to every major news outlet in the city." His face turned ash gray. "You wouldn't." "I already did," I whispered. Check your email. He turned to his monitor. His hands trembled on the mouse. As the screen loaded, the reality sank in emails sent, files attached, timestamps confirmed. Ava's timing was perfect. That night, the city buzzed with headlines. Investment icon exposed for fraud and deception, widow returns from the dead. Spreads like wildfire. Every news anchor wanted an interview with the woman who fooled death. But I didn't care about fame. I cared about freedom. Ava and I met in a quiet bar outside the city that night. She raised her glass. To the living. I clinked mine softly. To the ones who came back stronger. Later, I walked alone through the rainy streets, the neon reflections dancing in puddles. I passed a store window and caught my reflection again. But this time the ghost was. The morning after Marcus's downfall, the world finally knew my name again. Not as a widow, not as a victim, but as the woman who came back from the dead. The headlines were merciless. Clara Williams, the ghost who exposed a billionaire. From grave to glory, the woman who outsmarted Harper Investments. Everyone wanted a piece of my story. News anchors, journalists, even strangers on social media called me a legend. But behind the applause, I could still feel the silence, the kind that lingers after you've burned everything down. That morning, I brewed coffee in my small apartment, the one Ava insisted we use as a safe base. The city glimmered through the rain-smeared window, but my chest felt heavy. Ava walked in holding her tablet. You're trending again. CNN, BBC, even local blogs picked it up. You're officially the woman who cheated death. I smiled faintly. I didn't cheat death, Ava. I just refused to let it define me. She nodded, though her eyes lingered on me with concern. Are you okay? I don't know, I admitted. You ever realize that getting justice doesn't always feel like peace? Around noon, I got a call from an unknown number. First I ignored it, but it rang again. And again. Finally I answered. Hello. A slow, calm voice replied, a man's voice, unfamiliar but strangely deliberate. Mrs. Williams? Or should I say Clara the Resurrected? I froze. Who is this? You may have defeated Marcus, the voice continued. But you haven't destroyed the system he served. You just made yourself visible to the wrong people. The line clicked dead. That night I couldn't sleep. I replayed the call over and over, analyzing every breath, every pause. Whoever it was, he knew things he shouldn't. Ava found me sitting on the floor by the window, staring at the skyline. You got that look again, she said quietly. Someone called me. I murmured. He said Marcus wasn't the end. That I made myself a target. Ava's expression is hardened. They're bluffing. You hit them where it hurts. They're scared. But I wasn't so sure. Because later that night when I checked my email, I found a single message in my inbox. No sender. No subject. Just one sentence. We buried you once. Don't make us do it again. The next morning, I went to Marcus's former office. He had been arrested overnight, taken in for questioning. But when I arrived, the place was already being cleaned out. Shelves emptied, computers wiped. A security guard stopped me at the door. Sorry, ma'am. This area's restricted now. Restricted? I repeated. By who? He hesitated, then lowered his voice. Federal auditors came in at sunrise. But some men were here before that. Suits, no badges. They took boxes of files. No one knows who they were. I stepped back, the air in my lungs turning to ice. Someone was covering tracks, and not for Marcus. That evening, Ava and I went through the recovered files again. And buried deep in the archives, in a folder Marcus never meant me to find, was a series of offshore account transfers. They weren't in his name. They were under Harper Holdings too. A shell company run by someone else entirely, someone named Robert Kane. I whispered the name. Robert Kane. Why does that sound familiar? Ava's eyes widened. Because he's not just anyone. He's Harper Investments' silent founder. The man behind Marcus, behind everything. The room fell silent. It was never just Marcus. The corruption went deeper. And my resurrection had just unearthed the monster behind it all. That night I looked out at the city again. The lights shimmered like they always did, but now they looked different. Colder. Sharper. Like eyes watching me. I whispered into the glass. If they're coming for me, they'll have to do better this time. Because this time I wasn't the same woman who died. This time I was the storm. For years I thought Marcus was the villain of my story. But as I stared at Robert Kane's name on the document, I realized Marcus was just the mask. The real monster had never stepped into the light. Robert Kane. A name whispered in investment circles. A shadow that built empires, then vanished when the cameras appeared. And somehow he knew I was alive. Ava was already digging into his background by the time I brewed my second cup of coffee. Her eyes flickered across her laptop screen. This guy's a ghost. No public photos for the past 15 years, but his companies are everywhere: defense contracts, offshore funds, political donations. He's untouchable. I sat beside her. No one is untouchable. Not anymore. She looked up at me. Clara, you're talking about a man who probably owns half the city's lawyers. I don't care how powerful he is, I said quietly. He used Marcus. And Marcus used me. That makes this personal. By noon we were parked outside an old skyscraper downtown. The Harlow Building, the rumored headquarters of Kane's private foundation. It looked ordinary. Glass, steel, and corporate pride. But as I walked into the lobby, every instinct screamed danger. The receptionist smiled too politely. Cameras rotated towards me just a fraction too slowly. And when I gave the name Clara Williams, her expression faltered. For less than a second. But I saw it. Do you have an appointment? She asked. No, I replied. But tell Mr. Kane that the dead woman he helped bury wants a word. The color drained from her face. She excused herself, disappeared behind a frosted glass door. For 3 long minutes, the only sound in the lobby was the echo of my heartbeat. Then a man appeared, tall, silver-haired, calm as marble. He smiled. Mrs. Williams. You've certainly caused a stir. Robert Kane looked nothing like I imagined. No arrogance, no menace, just quiet control. That was the most dangerous kind. Why fake my death? I asked, skipping the pleasantries. He smiled faintly. Because your discovery is threatened more than Marcus's fortune. You found a leak in the machine, a system I built. And sometimes, Mrs. Williams, it's easier to erase a person than to discredit them. My throat tightened. Did you order it? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Instead, he poured himself a drink. You should have stayed gone. The world loves a good ghost story. I'm not a ghost, I said coldly. I'm the storm that comes after. When I left that building, I wasn't afraid. I was furious. Kane's calm confidence told me everything. He wasn't done with me. But now neither was I with him. That night, Ava and I packed everything, every file, every recording, every bank log into a single encrypted drive. We sent copies to 3 journalists we trusted and one person Kane could never predict. His own daughter, Isabel Kane, who had disappeared from his company years ago after calling him a moral cancer. If anyone could bring him down from the inside, it was her. 2 days later, Isabel called me. Her voice trembled slightly but carried strength. I've been waiting for this moment, Mrs. Williams. My father destroyed lives to protect his legacy. It's time the world saw who he really is. I exhaled slowly. Then let's make sure they never forget. That night the story went live. The Hidden Empire of Robert Kane. A 42-page exposé with proof of fraud, bribery, and political manipulation. Within hours the world exploded. Stocks crashed. Government agencies launched investigations. And for the first time, the man behind the curtain had nowhere left to hide. But victory didn't taste sweet. Because when I checked my mailbox the next morning, there was an unmarked envelope. Inside, a photo of Ava leaving her apartment. On the back, a handwritten note. You took my empire, Clara. Now I'll take yours. I dropped the photo, my hands trembling. The war wasn't over. It was just getting personal again. I looked out the window, whispering to myself, then let him come. I've already buried one life. I won't bury another. When you come back from the dead, the world doesn't welcome you. It watches you. Every headline, every whisper, every glance at the grocery store carried a question. Is that really her? I learned to walk again, not physically but socially. And just as I started to feel alive again, that photo reminded me I wasn't free. Ava didn't know yet. I didn't tell her. How could I? She was still laughing, still believing we'd finally won. But I knew Kane. Men like him didn't lose. They waited. They bled quietly until they could strike back harder. That evening I drove to her apartment. The air felt heavy electric. The hallway lights flickered like bad omen lights in an old movie. When I knocked, no one answered. My chest tightened. I pushed the door unlocked. Inside everything was neat. Too neat. Her laptop was open on the table, but the screen was dark. A single teacup still steamed. And there, on the kitchen counter, another envelope. I tore it open with shaking fingers. Inside was a single sentence. You took my empire. Now I'll teach you what loss really means. And beneath it, Ava's necklace. The police came, of course. They asked questions I couldn't answer. No sign of struggle. No forced entry. Just absence. When the officer left, I sat on her couch and stared at the wall until dawn. The city outside was waking up, traffic horns, life. But in that apartment, time stopped. That's when the guilt started to whisper. Maybe if I hadn't sent that file. Maybe if I hadn't fought back. But then another voice answered, deeper, colder. If you hadn't fought back, you'd still be buried. 3 days later, I got a call from Isabel Kane. Her voice was strained. Mrs. Williams, my father's gone off the grid. But I found something, his offshore records. There's a pattern. Someone's been transferring funds under a shell account. The same one Marcus used before he died. Marcus, the man who started it all. The man who'd lied, betrayed, then died, or so I thought. I froze. Are you saying? She hesitated. I'm saying Marcus Lane might not be dead. The world is tilted. I gripped the counter to steady myself. If Marcus was alive, everything changed. The funeral. The fake reports. The body they said was his. All of it could have been part of Kane's plan, or Marcus's escape. Either way, Ava's disappearance was no random act. I flew to Atlanta 2 days later. The last trace of the offshore account led there. The address Isabel sent was a quiet suburb. A large house hidden behind iron gates. I waited till midnight, then slipped inside through the side path. The garden lights glowed faintly, and through the glass wall of the living room I saw him. Marcus Lane. Alive. Older, heavier, but unmistakably him. Sitting with a glass of whiskey, staring at a file marked Williams. My heart went cold. I didn't confront him that night. I just watched long enough to see another figure enter the room. Robert Kane. They shook hands. Kane handed Marcus a photo, Ava's. I stumbled back, covering my mouth to keep from screaming. It wasn't Kane who betrayed Marcus. They were in this together. The funeral, the fake reports, it had all been a performance. And I was their final act. I returned to the hotel, shaking. The truth was a poison I couldn't yet share. But I knew what came next. I couldn't just survive anymore. I had to end it. So I made one final call to Isabel. Tomorrow, I said, we burn everything. Your father, Marcus, all of it. No more ghosts. She hesitated. Are you sure? Yes, I said. I died once. It's time someone else did too. That night I couldn't sleep. I stared at my reflection. The same face that had once cried at her own funeral. The same eyes that saw betrayal, loss, and rebirth. This time they looked different, colder, determined. For the first time I wasn't just surviving my story. I was rewriting it. There's a moment before revenge. A silence sharper than any scream. That's what I felt standing outside that mansion the next morning. Dawn hadn't been broken yet, but the sky was bruised purple, the kind of color that makes you think of endings. I parked a block away. The air was damp, heavy with storm scent. I could hear my heartbeat steady like a countdown. When I stepped through those iron gates again, I wasn't the same woman who'd been buried once. I was coming back to claim my life. Isabel waited by the car. Her hands trembled slightly, but her eyes were hard. They're both inside, she whispered. Conference room. I bugged the cameras. I nodded, adjusting the small recorder in my pocket. Inside, the house smelled of leather and whiskey. Marcus's favorite combination. The hallway felt endless. At the end, I saw them, Marcus and Robert Kane, seated across from each other, as calm as if they were planning a business dinner. When Marcus looked up and saw me, the glass slipped from his hand. His face went pale. Clara. I smiled, the kind of smile that hides storms. Good morning, darling. You didn't expect your dead wife to be punctual, did you? Kane stood, trying to regain his composure. Well, this is Unexpected. Oh, I doubt that, I said, stepping closer. You've been expecting me for years. You just hoped I'd stay buried. Marcus pushed his chair back. You don't understand, Clara. Oh, I understand perfectly. I took the file from his desk, the one labeled Williams. You buried me to save yourself. You and Kane forged reports, transferred the money, erased everything except me. Kane's voice turned cold. You should have stayed gone. The world believed your death. I met his gaze. The world believed in you once, too. Until I started talking. He lunged forward, but Isabel stepped into view, gun in hand. Sit down, Father. Her voice shook, but her hand didn't. I've watched you destroy everything you touched. But not this time. For a moment the room froze. Marcus's breath caught. Kane's eyes widened. And in that silence I realized something. This wasn't revenge anymore. It was release. I placed a USB drive on the table. Everything's backed up, every transaction, every lie. The press gets it in 20 minutes if I don't stop it. Marcus whispered. Clara, please. We can fix this. I looked at him, the man I once loved enough to die for. You had your chance to fix it. You chose to bury me instead. Kane tried to rise again, but Isabel fired not at him, but at the chandelier above. Glass rained down like tears frozen. The noise echoed through the mansion like a final verdict. When it stopped, we all stood there, covered in glittering dust, breathing in silence. You'll both face justice, I said quietly. One way or another. Then I turned to Isabel. Let's go. We walked out together, into the morning light. Behind us, sirens began to wail. She'd already called them before we went in. For the first time in years, I didn't look back. On the drive home, she asked softly, Do you feel free now? I stared out the window, the sun breaking through clouds like something reborn. I feel alive, I said. And that's more than they'll ever feel again. That night, I sat on my balcony, watching the city lights flicker below. Somewhere in that vast, glowing maze, the ghosts of my past were finally gone. I poured myself a glass of wine, smiled faintly, and whispered, To the woman who died. And the one who rose. Because sometimes the only way to live again is to let your old self be buried. The days that followed felt unreal. The city moved on as it always does. Cars honking, newspapers changing headlines, people sipping coffee, unaware that an empire had fallen overnight. Marcus and Kane were arrested 2 days later. Their faces, once symbols of power and prestige, filled every news channel. Fraud. Conspiracy. Attempted murder. The words looked too small for the weight of their sins. I didn't celebrate. There was no victory in seeing two ghosts dragged into daylight, only quiet relief. I moved into a small apartment overlooking the sea. The air there was clean, salty, and alive. Not suffocating like the city that once buried me. Every morning I'd walk barefoot on the shore, letting the waves erase my footprints as fast as I made them. There was something poetic about it. A reminder that everything, even pain, could be washed away. One morning Isabel joined me. Her hair danced in the wind, the same way mine used to when I was younger, before the lies, before the graves. She handed me a small envelope. From the bank, she said. They released your mother's estate. Everything's legally yours again. I smiled faintly. It was never about the money. I know, she said. But it's about closure. We sat on the sand, silent for a while. Then she asked, What will you do now? I looked at the horizon, that endless blue line between what was and what could be. Live, I said simply. Not survive. Not hide. Just live. She nodded, understanding more than my words could say. That evening I opened the last letter from my old life, one I'd written years ago, before everything fell apart. It was addressed to myself. Dear Clara, if you're reading this, it means you made it out. Maybe broken, maybe scarred, but alive. Don't waste your second chance trying to fix what died. Grow something new instead. Love without fear. And never forget who you had to become to survive. I folded the letter, placed it in a glass bottle, and threw it into the sea. It drifted away, carrying with it the last piece of the woman I used to be. Months later, I opened a small bookstore by the coast, Eleanor's Garden, named after my mother. The shelves were filled with stories of women who refused to vanish. People came, read, laughed, cried. Sometimes they recognized me, the woman from the headlines, but they never said it aloud. And I never confirmed it. I was just Clara, a survivor, a storyteller, and finally free. On the anniversary of my death, I stood again by the water, a single rose in hand. The tide kissed my feet. The wind whispered through my hair. And I smiled, because for the first time I realized the life I built after death wasn't revenge. It was resurrection.